Hi everyone, Dennis from Dennis Goes Fishing, and today I'm going to show you how to use a pickerel rig. They're relatively inexpensive, they're pretty straightforward to set up, and they are a very effective fishing method, especially for beginners. Although that's not to say that an advanced angler can't use them for great effect as well. So let's have a look. I have one set up here on my super awesome ancient rod. They're a little bit of a pain to store, that is for sure. So what we have on the bottom is a weight. Typically, we would use a standard weight such as this. There's a couple of different shapes. How much weight you want to use depends on how deep you're fishing. That's one that kind of go by feel. I believe that this here is a half-ounce jig. So somewhere around the half-ounce is a good place to start. If you have a lot of current, you go higher. If you're fishing shallow, you don't need to cast it very far, you go a little bit lower. I like to use a jig because that just gives us one extra hook. Where I'm at, you're allowed maximum of 4 hooks. This puts me at 3. So we have our jig or our weight on the bottom. We have another hook. I believe this one here is a size 2, which is a pretty effective hook. You can change these out later if you want. A little spreader right here to hold the hook out. We have a second spreader and hook. And then up here at the top, we have a barrel swivel, and I like to use a snap swivel as well. That way it's nice and easy-ish to unhook and change out your rig. Hook this one back up, and I'll show you how to install it on another rod. Here I have everything that we need to set up our pickerel rig. We have the pickerel rig, of course. We have our weights after it's all put together. We have a pair of scissors. I'd recommend a slightly nicer pair of scissors than what these ones are. We have the old lure that I took off of the line. Make sure that when you're cutting the old line off, that you go through the line and you inspect it for any little bit of fraying. This one was used pretty heavily around shore, so it had quite a bit of fraying. I cut quite a bit of line off, balled that up, put it back in my tackle box so that it doesn't get into the water. Usually when you're using a pickerel rig, you use live bait. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to use these little fake minnows so I don't hurt any real minnows while we're doing this. And let's get started. First thing you got to do, take your pickerel rig out of the packaging. I've got one right here that I already got started on. Do your best not to knot it as you're taking it apart. It does seem that they are rolled up very nicely, and they do tangle if you just grab them and pull. Okay, I have my pickerel rig. I'm going to grab my line, look for the end of it. You can tie directly to the barrel swivel on your rig. I'm going to use my little snap swivel here. There are a multitude of different knots that you can use. My favorite knot is the Palomar knot because nothing is stronger than love except for Palomar knots. We're going to fold the line over, put our snap swivel on the line, and then we are going to pass it through its own little loop, almost as if we're tying a regular knot. But where this gets fancy, we open up the end and pass our barrel swivel back through and then pull. And that gives us one very strong knot. And then we have to cut off this little trailer right here, which is much easier when you have nice scissors. And then we're going to toss that back in our tackle box so it doesn't end up in the water. Pliers work for cutting line as well. Just make sure you buy some good pliers if you're going to use braid, because braid does not like to cut. So I'm going to hook up my barrel to my swivel. Ooh, we're marking fish. I'm going to pull this up a little bit, make it easier to work on. Not that far. Put my weight on it. Okay, so here's the fun part. On this little spreader, we need to get our hooks attached. So the easiest way that I've found to do that is to pull the hook through the spreader, and then on the end of the hook, or the other end of the line that's attached to the hook, we just pass the hook through that line and make sure you pull the knot through and pull that nice and tight, and we are attached. I'm going to let out a little bit more line and do that again. Pass the hook through. Pass the hook through the eyelet on its own line. Make sure you put that little knot through the spreader. And once we get a few fish, that line will gain some memory and that'll hold in there very nicely. Okay, now we are set up and just about ready to fish. All we got to do is bait our hooks. So there are a few different ways to hook up a minnow, and talk to any fisherman, they're all going to have a different opinion. Two of the more common ways seem to be through the lips. So you hold the minnow right by the gills and pull that hook up and through, and that allows for quite a bit of action. The other way that keeps the minnows alive and allows them to move around and produce that fish grabbing action is if you go by the dorsal fin, and then you push the hook through, just about through the middle of the minnow, underneath the spine, and that allows for quite a bit of action as well. And then if you are going to use a jig in place of a weight on the bottom, be careful doing that in really weedy waters, but if it is sandy or rocky, or if it's early in the season, really good trick. Now, you'll notice that this jig is brand new, never been used, and that eyelet is blocked over. Don't use another hook to pop that open. A, if you slip, that's not going to feel very nice, and B, it will dull that other hook. So best for this, I find, is a pair of pliers, and you just kind of twist at that. This particular one is powder coated, so it is a little bit on the extra stubborn side. Oh, this one's gonna make me silly. Or have I already done that? You can let me know in the comments. Come on. I think I see now why people like to use other hooks. I think the hook might actually be safer than using the knife like this. If you are going to use another hook, make sure that you have one particular one picked out. Usually they're not that difficult. This one was powder coated with a couple of layers of powder. Once you have that off, we would hook that up as we normally would. And then through here, you can attach the minnow in the same manner. Or you can insert the hook through the minnow's mouth and then have it come out somewhere in its back while pushing the minnow all the way up your hook. And there you have it. That's how to set up a pickerel rig. I'm going to throw you on the chesty, go out into the channel, and see if I can't show you how to put this thing to action. If you're wondering how to fish a pickerel rig, there's basically two options. You can cast it and slowly pull it back on a slow retrieve, or you can jig it ever so gently, ever so softly. You don't want to jerk it too violently, phrasing. Otherwise, you run the risk of tangling the upper two hooks with the main line and nobody's going to have a good time. Oh, fish on. There we go. Oh, that's nice. What a if I got. Ooh. Oh, my first pike of the year. Okay, easy, easy. Oh, it's a beautiful fish. Oh, ouch. Calm down, calm down. Okay. Oh, there you go, little guy. Thanks for the visit. 25 inches on a pickerel rig. There you go. All right. Another 25 on the pickerel rig. Well, that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this entire video. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you want to see next. Have a good one. See you on the water.